Happy Bringling. Technology plays an important role in making the processes more faster and efficient, but it can have its own challenges. Myself, Anshab Jain, founder of Bringle, would like to request all of you to subscribe our YouTube channel Bringle Talks and watch the daily 21 days business sustainability challenge. Here are the pearls of wisdom for the topic Disruptive Technologies. Rohit Goyal, managing partner Windrose Capital, spoke about deep technology and gave an example of the transportation company where driver behavior from starting point to destination is tracked. Dr. Kostub gave scenario on how the supply chain model is broken as of now. He also mentioned the importance of immersive technologies and blended learning platforms like Bringle in schools and colleges. Gaurav Yadav, Director General Mills Asia, advised that startups can get going using the ready products available in the market. He spoke about the ability to move within offline and online work scenarios and how blended models would be the need of our now, as they have shifted 13,000 employees online seamlessly in a month's time. Anil Patel from UK and an investor in Bringle mentioned about the Bringle platform being the most secured blended meetups and learning platform and how deep technology solutions can make the processes more efficient. Arvind Narayan Murthy mentioned that post COVID-19, manufacturing industries in India will be booming. People-less factories and darkroom concept will emerge. IoT will play a big role in predicting the performance. Kailash Pandey, an investor and a corporate lawyer from Nepal, mentioned that disruptive technology is the victim of its own success and the original concept needs to come back. Also, it shouldn't be used only for big and profitable industries but smaller players too. Upload your pitch decks at bringleacademy.com/course/business sustainability and we will help you to achieve your $1 billion dream. Keep bringling, keep growing.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Happy Bringling. Once again, we are there on our 21 days business sustainability challenge. We at Bringle team, along with Vardhan, Solveworks, Women Lines, and Poonam Foundation, would like to welcome each of our speakers today, the participants on the Zoom call, and the people who are watching it live on our YouTube channel, Bringle Talks. Thanks for being there and continuing your pledge for consistently for 21 days. I would like to share a pulse of wisdom of the yesterday's session before I go ahead with the today's topic. Teji Singh actually spoke about talking about Six Sigma is a structured way of eliminating the cost. She cited her G experiences with an importance on leadership ready programs for any changes essential. She also briefed about the change acceleration program. She talked about the focus on end customers rather than the methodology. Hitesh Sangvi gave a lot of in-depth perspective on the various techniques and tools of Six Sigma. He also talked about fail fast, which helps you to know your strengths and your needs. He spoke about customer support is not just about external orientation, but knowledge about their dreams too. Karunesh Prasad was mentioning about how the methodology is to be implemented. There are various tools available, but we should not be tool focused, but solution focused and apply the techniques. His classic statement was, don't go with AK-47 to kill a mosquito. Mani, who is also the strategic partner of Bringle, defined the problem statement for every startup as initially the idea which has to convert into a product is very, very important. So prototyping and developing a minimum viable product is going to be very important. The DMADV, the design for Six Sigma approach, is going to be very important for creating a lean product. Today's topic is going to be disruptive technologies. And I would like to request all the startups, businesses, entrepreneurs to please go on our community page www.bringleacademy.com/course/business sustainability and upload your pitch decks for the live pitching week starting from 27th of April. So do take this opportunity and take your dream to become a $1 billion dream. Thank you so much. And with this, I would request Charu to introduce our today's speakers.
Thank you so much, Asha. A very good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to whole global community there. It's such a pleasure to welcome you all and welcome the experts today. We have Kailash Pandey, an angel investor, corporate lawyer, empowering business entrepreneurs and investors. Kathmandu-based angel investor and startup ecosystem enabler, he is a corporate lawyer based in Kathmandu, Nepal, and leads a dynamic team of amazing professionals at Lex Advisors that advises investors, businesses, and entrepreneurs on a wide range of legal issues related to startups, foreign investment, technology, intellectual property protection, cross-border transactions, taxation, and corporate and commercial contracts. Welcome, Kailash, to the show. We have Dr. Kostub Dhargalakar. He is a design thinking trainer, coach, and innovation and strategy consultant. A serial entrepreneur since 1990, founded 4 companies and is now on 2 more ventures. In 2006, he sold his commercial interest in first 3 companies and plunged into academics and research. He relishes the challenge of enhancing the innovation quotient of an organization by helping create new offerings to tap existing as well as new markets. Welcome, Dr. Kostub, to the show. We have Gaurav Yadav, Director, Technology and Solutions, Asia and India Center from Singapore. So he is Director, Technology and Solutions for General Mills Asia. In his role, he is accountable for digital and technology solutions for Asia, business in area of customer relationship, point of sales, Salesforce automation, mobile technology, data analytics, and machine learning. Gaurav has worked in multiple business areas and geographies across many business domains before joining General Mills. Welcome, Gaurav, to the show. We have Rohit Goyal, Managing Partner, Windross Capital. Rohit is active in venture capital space for over 7 years and has made multiple investments in past, which includes domestic as well as international deals. He has experience in managing international transactions involving multiple stakeholders and nationalities. He has entrepreneurial experience in manufacturing and technology. He has partnered and set up companies in and outside India with people from China, Sri Lanka, UK, and Germany. Welcome, Rohit, to the show. We have Arvind Y. Narayan Murthy. He's Director, Global Manufacturing Engineering at Armstrong Fluid Technology, product engineering professional with hands-on experience in design and development, project program management of electromechanical product system in HVAC, automotive, semiconductor manufacturing equipments, and machine tools automation industry. Welcome, Arvind, to the show. And we have Anil Patel, Senior Enterprise Cloud Architect with over 20 years experience in the IT industry. He has seen many changes in the sector from infrastructures in traditional data centers to virtual private clouds. Most recently, Anil has been involved in the Indian startup ecosystem since 2017, where he has been actively involved as well as being a silent investor. And yes, just want to introduce myself. I run an online women's magazine, womenlines.com, which is listed in top 40 women's online magazine to follow in 2020. So do follow and subscribe. It's such a pleasure to welcome all speakers, and let's gear up for a stimulating evening. I hand over to Anshiv now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charu, for that. And I think with this, I would want to ask the first question to Rohit. Rohit, if you can, because you coming from investment background and have quite a bit of experience in the deep tech technology startups. What I would like to know is that what is disruptive technology specifically in terms of layman? Because normally most of the people don't understand that. So what do you have to say on that?
Typically, there's a definition of the word disruption popularized primarily by Singularity University. So, which basically says that disruption, there are 3 things. It usually never comes from the domain that you are in. Second, it would always make your existing skill sets or your existing resources useless. And the third is that it usually is not just the product, or it's not just a single feature. It's actually the whole package of it and the way the product hits the market. So those are the three primary features of disruption usually for any new technology. Anything other than that is primarily innovation, where it's incremental benefit or percentage level optimization on one variable or the other. Disruption usually makes the old thing completely obsolete.
Okay. Rohit, would you want to kind of give us some kind of an example out here from one of your startups, how you can talk about these three aspects with respect to disruption?
So, okay, so we have this company called as Pressily in our portfolio. What it does is it basically has delivered AI technology which could read through legal and technical documents and actually contextually understand what is being written inside of it. So the application that the company is putting that to is basically helping these large consulting companies to conduct very quick and fast research. Let's say there is a complicated transfer pricing issue or some other issue that one of the big fours is facing. Now they would want to go back, sit on their data, go back to their database, check on what all the other case laws in connection with this particular event, and then then prepare a response to the current issue at hand. Now to do a sort of a pilot demoing with them, we took up a particular issue which had taken them about a team of 5 members over 35 days. And then after the research was presented, the partner took 2 further days to actually process the information and then create a response. Now we did a back testing of the same piece. This software took 2 hours to deliver the same research output. The partner on top of it had to work only for an additional 1 hour as against 2 days of partner time.
Okay. Uh, Rohit, are you there?
And about 10 to 15 man hours by a partner. Hello.
Yeah, Rohit, I think there was some
So reduction
interruption.
of time from that scale to a scale of 3 hours in totality. And just the turnaround time itself, like that is what I identify as proper disruption. It's not an incremental growth to what has been happening, but just a disruptive growth to what has been happening.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Rohit, I think that particularly greatly answers the question, and I think I have more questions. But before that, I would want to ask Anil. Anil, you being there in UK and being working as a cloud architect for a very long time, almost. How's your experience? And you've been also investing in a couple of startups. What is your experience in terms of when it comes to the examples of disruptions in the real startups world, or how it is different from the corporate world?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I've seen a lot of disruptive technologies in IT. We can go from the basics, which is a virtual machine, a developer puts software on it. That's a traditional way. Then it's physical. It's in a data center. It's expensive. It costs power, air conditioning. And now we come to a stage where everything is serverless, which means you don't manage anything. You just put it in the cloud and it goes and works. Now that's disruptive. As Rohit mentioned, it makes something obsolete. So the idea of creating something that's affordable and accessible and makes the old technology expensive and complicated. I'll give you an example. The mainframe computer. How many of you have seen a movie in the 50s and 60s and you go into a room and the computer is like as big as a warehouse, like a farm factory? Now everything's on your phone. So technology has been disruptive and made the old stuff obsolete, and it's replaced with something new. And going back to 3 key words that I always say, when you're disruptive, it goes hand in hand with iteration and innovation. So by iteration, we use it in IT a lot. It means you do the same thing, but you do it better. That's iteration. We do that all the time. We keep doing the same thing again and again and again, but we add a little extra to it. Then there's innovation. You design something new. And then there's disruption, which, like Rohit says, it makes the old obsolete and you've got something new. I'll give an example of how the word disruption has changed between the 21st century and, say, the 1800s. When I was growing up, I'll tell a little story. When I was growing up, when your class teacher said, "Oh, that pupil is disruptive," what does that mean? It doesn't mean that there's some technology and he's disrupted and created something new. It means he's hitting somebody. It means he's making a lot of noise and disrupting the class. But what do we mean by disruption now? We mean create something new in technology. It's got nothing to do with being bad. It's to do with being good and innovative. So when I was growing up, if a child is disruptive, he's bad. But when a startup is disruptive, it's not bad, it's good. So see how the shift has changed from the 1800s to now. So that would be my change, because we deploy things in the cloud so fast. Instead of doing things in 5 days, we do it in minutes. And that's the demand that customers have. They want things now. They want things quicker, faster, cheaper. And that's how we have to iterate and do things quickly. And we have mechanisms and technology in place that does that.
Yeah, Anil. So I think thanks for that explanation. I would want to make it a little more specific. So I think you very well know about Bringle. Do you think that the kind of platforms like Bringle and the way it is starting up right now in the industry, especially in the edutech market, the way people are shifting to the online systems and meetings and things, how do you think that the platforms like Bringle blended meetups and blended learning platforms are going to change or disrupt the education industry?
So if I go back to a bit of history, when people had to work from home and they didn't want to, and lots of leaders were saying, why do we go into work? Let's all work from home. Now we're in a situation where we're forced to work from home. So we've got the technology, we have WebEx, we have Zoom, we have Teams and lots of other things. Lark is another one. We have WhatsApp now, but they don't all offer everything in one platform. They all are good in their own sector. So WhatsApp messaging, you can't schedule meetings, you can't have a generated discussion and search for things in a quick way. There's limitation of users. Then you have platforms like Teams. Microsoft is really big in kicking up, competing with Slack, for example, online chat and integrating everything into one platform. So it's doing that and is using this opportunity to do it. But where Bringle comes in is where it's offering the capability of online meetings, as well as discussions, as well as scheduled meetings, as well as online classes. So to me, it's innovation and disruption in one. It's creating something new, and while we're also integrating, adding new things to it as well. So you might say, well, can you do live Facebook as well? Oh, yes, we can. Or can you integrate it with WhatsApp? No, but we're waiting for an API and we'll implement it. So there's multiple connections and integrations that can be used on the platform. So to answer your question, yes, I think it is.
Okay. So I think thanks, Anil. That is pretty good. So I think another point you have brought in down is, and which we also talk about at the Bringle platform side, that it reduces the administrative effort by more than 80%. So by going to multiple platforms rather than doing that and increasing your effort and cost, what we are saying is that we are bringing in it at a one platform, integrating various aspects, and that's the kind of a disruption which you are talking about as an end-to-end flow.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at administration, secretaries, PAs, there's so much wasted time and space, paperwork. By the time you give somebody a piece of paper to say, can you do this? He might not look at it for 2 days. So we're taking that administration away. And if anybody can take administration away from anybody, day-to-day, mundane, repetitive tasks, it's like RPA, robotic process automation. This takes it away, right? So Bringle takes that administration away because it's all automated. It takes the mundane tasks away.
Okay. Thanks, Anil. I think you've answered my question pretty nicely. And I just wanted to have a very layman kind of answer for the startups to understand, because there are millions of startups who are watching this at this point in time. With this, I have another question. the current situation requires a lot of new solution to be built upon, especially in current times. And how do we bring disruption in those scenarios? And this question I would like to ask Gaurav. And Gaurav, you were talking, sharing about something about your experiences in current times. So if you
Yeah.
can put some light, throw some light on that.
Yeah. So I think the age-old question of saying, do you want to build or buy? Right. I think this whole passion of saying, I want to build exactly what I want, but you could take your credit card and buy it in an hour. So what Anil just said, I had a very interesting discussion with a friend who ran networks, and they were moving offices, and I said, so you're moving infrastructure with it? He said, no. Whenever I want, I'll spawn up a new VDI machine. I have a credit card and I have a phone, and that's what I need. If I want to add 1,100 new machines, it's going to take me 1 minute. Now, in historic time, if you ever did that, it would probably take 6 months to get approvals, and then probably take 6 months to deploy it. And
Yeah.
then you will have a 1,000-seater center. When I was talking about my experience of what's happening around the world, I have a large presence in China. So it was announced on 22nd that there is a lockdown, and we had over 50 people who did not have a machine. And it took us 20 minutes to get them what they need without anybody getting out of the home. Getting them to a Fortune 100 security where people could come and access anything from anywhere. Now, if we were supposed to build these things, I think it would just take enormous amount of people time. So to me, I think it's a question of whether you want to build or buy. Today, we have this whole advantage of somebody has done this before you and giving this as a service. And I think this is a very difficult question for a startup, because sometimes these things look expensive, but I think they are more relevant for startup because you don't have the capital to spend. You would want to spend slowly, and when the business grows, you could look for a better solution. For this moment, you would want to go in and buy a service. So that would be my recommendation for people who are starting up, to look for what's best in the market and buy it off shelf.
Okay. Uh, Gaurav, I think we were discussing before starting this live, uh, and there was one case study which you were mentioning about how the thousands of people are working from home without disruption, without
Yeah,
any challenges from them. So, can
right.
specifically in these times, can you mention about that case study at least at this point
Yeah,
of
so
time?
I'll give a little bit of case study. So I work for a Fortune 200 company, and we are over 100 countries. And one day we decided that it is not safe for people to travel, get out, and get into situations where they can get sick or their families can get sick. So we put up a message out to everybody and saying, hey, from tomorrow you need to work from home. Everybody went in. We had 13,000 people who work from home day one. And the only thing we got was 70 additional service desk calls, and that's about it. But regularly, everything worked perfectly fine. And now we are in the 5th week, and we've not had a single disruption on this. Now, none of this happened because we were lucky. This happened because we planned. 2 years back, we actually put this into our strategy in saying we want to enable our people to have information anywhere, any device, at any time. Everybody, kind of laughs at Microsoft for a lot of things, but I think one of the most disruptive product that they have made, and again, it's not new, somebody has done it before, is Office 365. Today, if you want to spawn a new organization of 30 people, you just call Microsoft, give them a credit card. You could have 30 email boxes, you could have 30 drives, 30 Office documents, Office licenses. And those are the reasons why large organizations who have taken these proactive steps could be super successful, because you're using the best in class at that point of time. Now, is Microsoft Office is the best product? Probably not, but it just gets it done, right? So those intelligent decisions at right time enabled an organization like us to take a decision with a snap, and we were working without a disruption.
I mean, actually, that's a perfect case study in these times when, because most of the people were unprepared, and being into a prepared state beforehand probably has helped you out to sustain that. I've also seen some of the corporates actually getting more businesses in these times because of their unique models. And because of their own strengths, which they have been capitalizing. In fact, we have also seen a quite a bit of us, almost like a 10 times, 100 times surge, which we have seen in our, platform requirements as well in these times. And suddenly, what people have realized that all of their offline models have completely gone bad, and everybody is now turning into the online. And shift from this offline to online is not easy because it comes with a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
not.
infrastructural changes, and people were not ready. And right now people are not there to really provide those infrastructural changes immediately at this point in time.
Yeah.
So
So, Anshab, I'll give one additional input on this. So, you used a very interesting word saying online to offline. I think everybody's now talking about online to offline and offline to online. We actually run over 500 shops around Asia, and these are ice cream shops, ice cream parlors. So when something goes wrong, people don't go eat ice creams. But when you're locked down and you want to feel something, you still eat ice cream, but you don't want to go out. So we actually started ordering. Now you'll be very surprised that there are organizations like Swiggy in India who can make this happen without too much investment. You just need a cell phone. You actually just don't need anything except a cell phone and account, and that is about it. You could still run a business with using a service. So I think it's very critical to understand what service works for your business. So
uh, you're absolutely right. So by the way, after it's like I think we are on the 13th day of this 21 days challenge. uh, since morning I've received calls from three startups after who has been watching this show consistently for the last 13 14 days. And one of the startup is actually was having a complete offline model. And the worst part is that they're still calling us and telling me that, can you get us some businesses, can you get us some more business for my place, because the infrastructure is there and I can't utilize it, I'm still paying the rents. The question to her was from me is, do we really want to continue with the same offline model, and how long we can sustain into that? Because in current scenarios, the offline models is not going to go, at least in next 6 to 9 months, it will not happen. It will not open up. So you have to quickly turn up into some online models, slowly to blended models, and then eventually two probably offline models may come in. So frankly speaking, either online or blended models are going to work in the coming scenarios. And this change has to be there in both the business models as well, not only with respect to the technology, but with respect, I mean, technology can enable or assist them, but the conceptually they have to bring in that continuity planning in their mind, that they keep the blended models into that. And I think nobody has been talking about the blended modeling at this point in time, and which is going to be very essential. And with this, I am asking this question to Kaustubh. uh, Kaustubh, I have seen that you have got your own three ventures, and then you went into an academic world and researching a lot on innovation and disruption. Uh, how do you think that business modeling or innovation goes hand in hand with the technology disruptions in the startup or the business world?
First of all, just tackling the first point that you mentioned about the business models. Right now, can you hear me? Am I audible?
You are audible, Kaustubh.
So firstly, because of this COVID, a lot of supply chains have broken down, some beyond repair. So it's like a new normal being set. So, just some time back, I was talking with a startup from my circles, and he was saying that, "Oh, I think in 3 months, we'll come back and, things will get normal." So my point was that in these 3 months, we will have developed certain habits which have already taken us away from the offline model and have made us comfortable with the online model. So getting those things coming back to normal in 3 to 6 months is, I think, not going to happen in most industries. Because of which a lot of idle capacity is going to be seen in the supply chains around the world. So we really need to look at how we can create win-win situations amongst these idle installed capacities, and that's how I see the way forward for large corporations, as well as now startups need to look at how they can kind of create some platforms which bring these idle capacities onto some uniform place. That's one thing that I look at. As far as disruption is concerned, I mean, as Rohit in the beginning mentioned, that it makes the incumbent obsolete. So I feel it is like the microscope moment of the 21st century, so to say. Say 200 years back when the microscope was invented, it opened a world of organisms which was never seen before. So initially when people died of some disease, people thought, bhai mar gaya, something happened and undiagnosed somebody died. Then a whole world of bacteria and viruses became evident, and we started pinpointing to the causes. This causes this and that causes that, etc. And databases started building up. Now today we are going to even a more microscopic world of, now for example, 25 years back when the world was kind of exposed to this terrorism threat, metal detectors became the norm. Now this terrorist is an unseen terrorist, and we really need to get into an even microscopic world to find who is infected and who is not infected. So I see a lot of scope for high resolution cameras combined with data sets of organisms. So from a distance, how do you do mass segregation? Data sets need to be built up about these, how the molecular signatures of these various organisms are, and with technologies such as high resolution cameras or whatever, breath analyzers, etc., we'll have to go into a completely different space. That's where the disruption will really happen. Maybe at the individual level, wearables need to check certain parameters which were not being checked till yesterday to really pre-warn people. Those parameters connected to the cloud will help a lot of tracking and traceability in creating isolation zones, etc., etc., etc. So I feel there is a lot of scope for people in these spaces as far as the healthcare space is concerned. That's my take on what is the upcoming space. Upcoming kind of things that some of the startups in the IT, AI, data set building, computer vision, and those kinds of spaces, people who are involved in.
Yeah, Kaustubh Singh, I think health is anyways a primary need. We've been always, there's a saying that you will pay anything and everything to a doctor, but you will not pay anything to a teacher. So so health had always been a very important aspect, and people always defer their learning needs, and that actually creates a lot of issues with respect to people capability also, in terms of development of their own skills. What I am looking at is that, okay, health is one sector. What do you think the education sector? Because right now, suddenly I've seen a lot of investors and people across the globe are suddenly have put back their focus on the education industry, which was actually kind of left upon for a period of time. A lot of people were saying, okay, edtech market is already flooded and it is not required. We don't need much of the things. People have been moving to fintech or health tech brands, but now suddenly there is a large focus on education sector. Why do you think is coming back to the education at this time?
See, because the signals are clear. I think most US universities have said the next semester, the fall semester, is going to be completely online. Now, existing tools, whatever exists in the edtech space, are not really interactive and immersive. So that immersive element, the collaboration element, etc., will have to be really relooked at. How can that entire physical classroom become an online classroom? How can it really become an immersive thing the way a physical classroom is? A lot of, I think every edtech platform has that piece missing even now. So the focus has to be on.
By the way, Kaustubh, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but Bringle platform has all the features of a blended university. And all the immersive things which you're talking about, virtual labs integration, content of development of augmented reality, virtual reality. We've been working with couple of clients for, for last 2 years now. There are some B2B clients and there are many B2C clients as well, in terms of the specifically for mentors. And I think there are few spaces, that is where Anil has mentioned that lot of places we see that happening in a very individualistic manner. Like we see Vedantu doing live classes only for them using their Zoom, using the platform, video conferencing platform. Then we have platforms like Byju's, who have a ready content, e-learning content, which is more probably a little. There is no gamification aspect out there. Uh, but yes, in when it comes to Bringle platform, it has the entire gamification based content curation platforms. It has a integrated live classrooms which is more connected. There are discussion forums. There are kind of a various virtual labs which you can integrate, and various other features. I mean, there is an entire 11 minutes demo available on our community page of Top 100 Mentors Club, which anybody can see to it. But what I'm trying to understand is that how do we reach out to these universities now? Now there is a need, and there is a platform also available like this, let's say. Now, if we want to reach out to them, and I'm sure there would be some other platforms here and there might be available. So were the universities not looking for such kind of models earlier, and now suddenly they have realized, or it is the supply gap is actually there?
Uh, I think universities were knew that it existed and knew that it is required, but the existing model has been working. So why look at this? Is what's the general view of the universities now with this shock? They have been forced to look at it. So now if you go with demos to these universities and show them this is XYZ happening, I think they're going to be very open with all of these things. So that shock has come.
Probably yes. Probably that is the reason we have probably seen a quite a big surge in our inquiries suddenly,
I'm sure.
and a lot of individual trainers also, or the mentors who were running their businesses locally and were very happy with it. Now suddenly, when they started using Zoom, they realized that along with Zoom, there are 100 other administrative
Well,
efforts which starts coming up with it, and
absolutely.
it's becoming crazy for them, literally crazy.
Yeah.
And many of the teachers in schools, and my daughter, of course, everybody's online classes are happening right now using Zoom. My
Correct.
daughter keeps struggling every day. There are no assessments which are available, there is no gradings available, there is no interaction available, you cannot watch the recordings which has been done, the teacher is not communicative, as you talked about, immersive technology. So I think with this, I would, I think it will go. I can go on and on from when it comes to the education industry. But yes, let's move on to Arvind. Uh, Arvind, I have a question for you specifically from the manufacturing industry. Considering the current scenarios, how do you think the technology is going to play a major role, and how it is going to disrupt and change the manufacturing world?
Yeah, thank you, Anshav. So, see, my exposure, I have around 25 years in the industry now, automotive, semiconductors, as you mentioned. So here, in my opinion, in my observation, manufacturing is going to be one of the biggest users of disruptive technologies. For example, whether it is machine learning or data analytics or artificial intelligence, and then all this built into what we call factory automation. So if you see today, a lot of countries due to COVID have already started talking about moving out of China. Everybody went to China because of what? Cheap labor and material. So now, how do you get rid of this problem, or how do you actually move out? So what happens now going forward is a lot of companies. This is happening in US already. All the in the since Trump came to power, he's been pushing to get jobs back in the US, right? So what's happening? They're advertising that so many companies came back, but in reality, they came back with a lot of automation. So they are employing hardly 30% of the people that they employed in the US previously for doing the same product, or at least 50% less than what China uses. So going forward, as a disruptive technology, what I see in manufacturing is people-less factories. You put material inside, you get product outside. These factories are already available in fringe, like here and there, one in Japan or somewhere. I saw one in Noida long time back, washing machine manufacturer, which is completely dark room. We call it dark room manufacturing. There is not even lights inside. So you put raw material inside, you get a finished product outside. So that is the level of automation which has been tested and proven already. So I think that is disruptive in manufacturing. That is disruptive. It makes the whole organization, manufacturing organization, kind of obsolete, right? You don't need operators, you don't need supervisors, you don't need quality department, you don't need logistics guys who move items from here to there. Nothing. So that's the disruptive. And the other thing is the IoT part of it, Internet of Things. Earlier, you had to really go to the machine and look at the screens or error message to find out what is wrong and then take preventive actions or corrective actions to fix the machine. Today with IoT, the technology is so powerful. When it is rightly implemented with machine learning and data analytics, you can predict the performance of the product and predict the errors or issues that is going to crop up over a period of time. For example, in a mechanical system, typically the way we find out there is a problem in a machine is either through noise or through vibration or leaks, like water leak or oil leak or things like that. So by putting sensors and collecting this data over a period of time, you will be able to predict, looking at the vibration graph, like if it's going like this and suddenly it becomes like this and suddenly it reaches a value, then you know that this is going in the wrong direction. You can send alert messages to maintenance department personnel, whoever is registered, so that they can come and fix it. Or if there is a water sensor and then there is a leak, it will immediately send a message to come and fix it. So there are huge things going on in our own company. We have launched a product called Pump Manager. We make pumps for all buildings, basically commercial buildings, whether it is hospitals, factories, offices, malls, everything in the AC, HVAC industry. So this Pump Manager now, we just launched last year, and then it was getting a mixed response. But you know what? Now suddenly the demand for this has gone up after COVID, because now people cannot go into the factory and check and all this stuff, but hospitals have to run, data centers have to run, right? Pharmaceutical companies have to run, and all of them have our pumps and pump products. So now the demand for this has suddenly risen. So what I'm saying is these kind of technologies which helps you manufacture, maintain your products or machinery in your factory without going in there is disruptive, and that's going to be a big thing going forward.
Thanks, Arvind. I think that's a very nice explanation. And Kailash, I'm just purposefully keeping the best for the last. There is a reason behind it, so please don't feel that I'm coming to you at the last. There is a specific reason on that. I will have one more question for Rohit, and then I'll come back to you.
Anshav, I've just got one question.
Yeah,
I've forgotten the gentleman's name. What was his name just now?
Arvind.
Arvind. Hi, Arvind. I get your point about IoT. So I work with organizations that want IoT as well. And I can't remember, but many, many years ago, I remember someone telling me this idea about, wouldn't it be great if you could, all these oil companies that you see in the oceans, BP, Shell, they've got lots of pipes, and he was an engineer, and he's, when there's a pipe that breaks, they have to fly him out, and how can we save that time, etc. And that's when IoT came in, I'm talking about 8 years ago, and that wouldn't that have been a great idea then? Now we're talking about everybody's got it. Yeah. So IoT is in like shipping containers. Then you add blockchain to that as well. So a big shipping container like Maersk has partnered with IBM blockchain to fully do an end-to-end chain of the actual source of the product. So let's say tomatoes from Africa, South Africa, and they got to ship it to Texas. Now that whole flow of one of the tomatoes going to Texas, and the blockchain technology and the IoT tracking, monitoring, all this stuff, it's massive, like you say. So I just wanted to add that little bit that it is explosive.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Anil.
Thanks, Anshav.
So Rohit, I just want to bring back to my earlier question. What Arvind mentioned, is that something kind of a deep tech technology, or the organization tech kind of models which you were talking about earlier?
So that is part A of the whole piece. See, for any deep tech, you first need to have and collect a lot of data. So what IoT enables is it enables pumping of a lot of data over a lot of variables, a lot of parameters. How the organization then uses it could become a deep tech type of an exercise. So to give you an example, one of our portfolio companies, which was into passenger transportation, we are no longer, we've exited the entity now, hence I wouldn't want to name it. So there we were able to actually affect driver behavior and how should the driver drive, as well as incentivize them for proper driving behavior. And this was all linked to what sort of a mileage that driver is able to pull out. Now imagine running a huge scale logistics operations where the primary cost that you are actually putting on is fuel and salaries, right? How do you mitigate the two? How do you say if one of them goes up, the other needs to go down because it has happened due to carelessness, so on and so forth. So as in, it is a very small sort of explanation of what deep tech can do, but that's where it all began, right? It started with an IoT devices which were on board onto the vehicles, wherein we started collecting more and more data about driver behavior and how it's impacting. By using deep technology, we were able to sort of define what sort of proactive alerts and actions driver needs to take, which sort of drivers need more training to drive in a certain manner, and then sort of effect it. So this is what I'm saying, that it started with simple IoT devices, but then using machine learning and using more predictive analytics around that, we were able to sort of get a hang of what's happening there and then push it out there.
Okay, got it. I think Rohit, what I have understood is, for the benefit of the entrepreneurs out there, the deep tech is basically when it comes to usage, generating that lots of data and probably using that data for some output coming to that, and then taking up a better decision. Is that the one which kinds of talks about deep tech? Probably the inclusion of AI and EI could be part of it.
Yes and no, in a very broad sense, probably yes, but that's how we would also define big data or big data analytics for that matter. When it comes to deep tech, it also means that software that you're using is able to learn from the history, so from its history, right? So as and when the more you're using the tool, the more accurate and the more smarter the tool becomes. So that is the basic intents of deep technology. Now it could be applied to analyzing, let's say, data fields. It could be used to analyzing text. It could be used to analyze voice signals, images. Like computer vision, we are seeing fantastic applications of computer vision coming up, and when it goes to computer vision, it's not just restricted to the human visible spectrum, but it can go way beyond that as well. I'll just give another example. We were speaking of oil rigs and how can we make them more safer. So one of our companies actually is into drone manufacturing, and they collect a lot of image based data and are able to analyze it, right? So what they now, so the old method of actually looking for safety checks in an oil rig is they used to put people with cameras on a helicopter and make the helicopter go around the oil rig. Now you can imagine what sort of cost and risks that involves. That has now been replaced by a drone flying much closer to the oil rig, is able to capture much better images with much better cameras on board. And now we are able to look at even micro cracks or nano, like, thermal sort of infrared imaging of various structures to identify cracks that are invisible to human eyes, so as to be able to predict where, when and where maintenance would be required next. So it's not just about collecting a lot of data, but it's also about being able to develop actionable insights on top of it. And the more you use it, the smarter it becomes. Sort of another thumb rule when it comes to any deep tech or technology.
Rohit, yeah, that's interesting. You say that. So it's Anil here. So I'm trying to apply that with. Let me go back a little bit. So machine learning, for example, we talked about that. It's very prevalent now, but it's actually been around for decades.
Yep.
For example, as you know, there's a famous chess player that was playing against a machine, and he won everything. But the machine was learning his every move, and the machine lost. But it tries to learn all those moves, and over time, it wins a game. So much that it won the human person. So you may have read about it, but so the machine won because it learned all the mistakes that they made, and it learned from those mistakes to win. Now, when you want to go into machine learning and deep learning, you can go even deeper. Like there are more complicated games than chess out there in the world, and that's where you have to go even deeper. So the fact that you have to get all this data has to be actionable. There's no point just keeping it and doing nothing about it. So you present the data, the analytics, maybe Power BI in front, and show it to the engineers and say, right, we predict in winter, this is going to happen based on the information that you've got. So I like the idea of the drones. I never thought about that, but that's interesting startup that you're involved in there.
Oh, you'd be
Thank you.
surprised. In fact, one of a very, because you just brought up winter, one of the other application Karnataka government had here actually put us up to was to just measure the sag between high tension power lines and how does that vary between summers and winters, right?
Mhm.
Because and that's a huge safety hazard. So for the way it was done traditionally, and now we are able to do the same task in probably a fraction of a time, in a fraction of a cost, and with much higher accuracy and. So it's interesting when you come to think of it that technology at its core, yes, you could have great technology, you could build something really complicated, but when it's about solutioning, when it's about the application of where you put it, how you put it to use, very surprising use cases pop up, and that's where you start seeing the real value add that the tech can bring in.
Yeah, Rohit. I think thanks, Rohit and Anil, for bringing this to more clarity, especially for the entrepreneurs, and because most of the times people keep surfacing it around when it comes to technology. They always keep thinking about. They sometimes feel that even having a website is enablement of a technology, and that is that is probably 80% of the people you will find something like that. And when it comes to deep technology, not many people have that kind of concepts understood, enabled into that. I think with this, I would want to now finally go to Kailash. Uh, Kailash, I see that you have a profile. You've been an investor. You have been a corporate lawyer. And what I would like to know, especially you coming from Nepal, what I would like to know is that in the countries like Nepal, or the places like Nepal, which probably how the startup ecosystem is there right now. That is one. Second, the shift which is happening from offline to online, how the cyber security aspects are going to become more important from the legal point of view specifically.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Anshab. I think it has been a great panel, and getting to know a lot of things about it. So I'd put my perspective on the startup scene in Nepal. So if you were to look, it's just growing definitely because, like the startup scene picked up in 2010 or 12 around, probably most in India. Like I was in India at that point in time, and, working with some investment banking firm helping startups raise money. And it was only in 2016 that I moved back to Kathmandu. Since then, I've been closely monitoring the, market here. So technically a lot of ideas, as you say, it's probably true for most of the South Asian market. Is most are already successful models being copied and then implemented, right? So Nepal is no different to that. So a lot of things that started here, starting right from digital payments to e-commerce, were a part of it. Like when Rocket Internet focused on maybe a developing nations for the e-commerce thing, when large e-commerce were being established in developed nations. I think Nepal was one of their pilot project wherein they started as Kemu, and then later sold it to Alibaba now. So they're pretty doing pretty good here. So technically speaking, the startup scene over here has been vibrant so far, until this the crisis came up. And so there were some activities of investments going lately, not the typical VC kind of investment that happens in larger markets like India, but yeah, relatively smaller one. But there have been some, incredible investment. And touching upon another part, the cybersecurity, I think that's been a huge issue over here, and that is something a lot of tech firms, and maybe it is an opportunity for some new entrepreneurs to enter into that area. And maybe that is something where disruptive technologies can happen next, because as we often tend to define disruptive technology in our own ways, I think we need to go back to the history and find where this term particularly originated. So I was curious enough to look back, and I think it was Professor Clayton from Harvard who coined this term called disruptive innovation, wherein he was trying to tell about how disruption takes place, and what are the criteria to define a particular innovation as a disruptive innovation or a disruptive technology. Now moving on, when we come maybe around 20 25 years later, the term, I guess, has been a victim of its own success, because it is often misunderstood to something that changes everything. But that was not the original meaning of the term, because as far as I know, because there were two areas where Professor Clayton focused on when he talked about disruptive innovation or disruptive technology happening. So one was, the low end foothold market, wherein the most of the incumbent players would not want to focus on. So if I was to connect to the existing cybersecurity scenario over here, large cybersecurity firms had been focusing on bigger players, say banks, insurance, because those are the more profitable sectors, right? But with the technology startups and new businesses coming up, I think cybersecurity is important for all the players all around. And even when we are talking about use of technology, like new shift in our working mechanisms, and use of technologies like Zoom and other platforms, I think it's more prevalent now, because we have been often hearing about data breaches, like one of the internet service providers data were breached just recently. Around 50,000 user private information was leaked online. A few months back, there was this the food delivery applications, wherein another issue of data breaches were there, where around 50,000 customers data were compromised. So what I'm trying to say is, this might be an opportunity for the players, because the older firms, the already existing firms, the larger firms, they are focusing on more profitable or higher paying customers, like the banks, insurance, already established sectors. But I think the new players can come in with a more, a kind of product which is relatively less expensive, may not be sophisticated as the, the product that are available, that existing, large player can provide, but relatively shift that market, right? So because, with the lower cost, it would have its own limitations regarding developing a product that the existing marketplace would be readily, would not be readily be, able to accept that. But as the development moves, as the customer, switches to that product, because what happens is the larger firms are always trying to, cater to the larger, in the larger players with more profits, wherein they want to add more features to the existing product and make it more sophisticated. But those kind of products may not be, uniformly acceptable or maybe usable for all the businesses. So So what smaller firms in terms of technological disruptive technology can do is come up with a product less sophisticated but maybe relatively cheaper, and more firms usability thing, so that larger firms can later on realize that, okay, so if you were to get something done, this can also get it done. We are not supposed to go to a sophisticated thing that cost us much more than what something that can get us our work done in a less cost effective manner. So that might be an area that new firms can look into in terms of disruptive technology, particularly in cybersecurity sector.
Right, Kailash. I think that's very, very important. And I think when it comes to data, and as Rohit was mentioning about a lot of things about data, analytics, and it's all about protecting that data. And cybersecurity has been there for a while now, but
Right.
considering the online world, it will become all the more important. In fact,
True.
today only Indian government has kind of issued a kind of a information notice kind of thing to be very careful about using online platforms like Zoom and all, and they've given their directives
Right.
and some ways how you can protect your data security. So I think it is going to be very, very essential. While on the other side, Zoom CEO has actually come out in open, sent a video over social media that they're fully protected.
Right.
Uh, so I
Anshul,
understand.
can I add something?
Yeah.
Okay, so on a cybersecurity perspective, and specifically Zoom. So there's a lot of talk about Zoom being compromised. That's actually not the case. In cybersecurity terms, there's something called credential stuffing. I don't know if anybody's heard of that term, but basically, I'll give you an example. How many of us here, and we all do it, have got the same password for 5 websites? Yeah. So my email address will have a password. That same password I'm using at Dropbox or I'm using with TeamViewer. So credential stuffing means that hackers have got the passwords from another website and they're reusing them on Zoom. So there's a difference. So if you understand what that difference is, it's actually not Zoom that's been hacked. Just to clarify.
Yeah, true.
I mean, that's a very interesting insight, Anil, frankly, but the way it is getting, I mean, I don't know whether you should call it as popularized or depopularized, but it has been there as a big concern right now. And lot of corporates have actually blocked the Zoom in their corporate network. So you cannot use Zoom in their network.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very probably drastic exercise. I mean, I know the CEO has mentioned all this, but they're mitigating their risk, right? So asking people to change their passwords, whatever that might be. But it could happen to Microsoft. It could happen to Google. But they've got such clever technology. Are the hackers 10 steps in front of them or not? They've probably deployed 100 hackers already on site, and they pay them handsomely to say, Mr. XYZ, try and hack my system, and they will get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars just to try and hack it. So there's people out there that actually do it for a living, go and crack everything, even Wi-Fi. So I'm talking about the cybersecurity because we talked about it, but Wi-Fi's can be hacked. When people go to, I think we're diverting here, but when you go to a free Wi-Fi spot, I can tell you now, I can hack it. So there's many mechanisms that can do it, and before you know it, I've got your credit card information. I know who you're talking to. So you have to take all this information with a bit of pinch of salt and just try and secure your own personal environment.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anil, for that clarity. Kaustubh, I would want to ask few things from you, considering your vast experience, setting up your own organizations and then now working. Can you share some couple of 1 or 2 examples in the real world which you have seen, which has shown the real disruptions in the industry? I mean, both from the technology and as well as maybe the business model side as well.
I'll pick up from deep tech, which one of the participants talked. I think it was Rohit.
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 Right.
It's a 2.5-year-old story. I was doing work with some telecalling BPO. You know, the guys who pester us with, you want this, you want that, and they keep calling us,
Credit cards and all that.
all of that, right? And they wanted to kind of bring in efficiency in that whole process. Because they used to, so we were generally having a brainstorming session, kind of a workshop. So after about a couple of hours into the discussion, uh, I had ensured that two telecallers also should be a part of this entire brainstorming exercise, because they are the ones who are in touch with the customer actually. The senior management was talking about a lot of quality of service parameters, this, that, etc., etc. These two were sitting very quietly. So at the first coffee break, I just sat with them, and they said that, what, all this discussion, all this is fine, but when I pick up the receiver and talk to a prospect, in the first 5 or 6 sentences, I kind of come to know what that prospect must be feeling, whether it's going to convert or not going to convert. It's a very subjective parameter, subjective judgment. Now, when we restarted after the coffee break, I mean, I brought this point back into the discussion. And then I was, all of us, all the senior folks pounced on us saying that we have 3,500 telecallers making 50 to 70 calls per shift, which means we have, at the end of the shift, we have 200,000 calls done. And if we were to take into account the subjective judgment of each caller, it's a impossible operational nightmare. We can't do that. But then the question was, what does really voice tone mean? Because this telecaller was saying that from the voice tone, I can kind of figure out what is the intent. Then finally, it was a simple thing like voice tone is actually a sound wave, which has amplitude, which has wavelength, and which has frequency. And all these three are perfectly measurable. Then it's just a question of recognizing the patterns and building a data set large enough to do some correlations. Now, this was, then the next question was, how many old call logs do you have? They said we had about 4.5 million call logs recorded over the previous 8 years or so. And then, that statement which they ask us before the call gets connected, that this call is going to be recorded for training and quality purposes, which means they have the recordings. And then my next question was, do you have the outcomes of these kind of recorded? Which means this customer took 14 calls to get converted, this customer took 5 calls to get converted, etc., etc., etc. Then it was just creating a voice engine which kind of correlated with the pattern of the output. And finally, what came out was we found 5 buckets depending on the voice tone. Voice tone pattern A corresponded to an outright immediate conversion of the prospect. Voice tone pattern B converted to corresponded with a maybe yes. Voice tone pattern C was a fringe yes no. Voice tone pattern D was maybe no. Voice tone pattern E was outright no. So now what they have done, then there was one startup in my circle who was doing something with this speech recognition. They got connected, and I think in a space of about 7 to 8 months, these guys created a voice analysis engine, which now it's a self-learning algorithm. When a telecaller picks up and speaks to a prospect, within the first 12 words, that the prospect's voice is analyzed by the backend engine, and which probable pattern the caller falls in, the prospect falls in, gets displayed in front of the telecaller screen. Pattern A, pattern B, pattern C, or pattern D, or pattern E. And then suppose the person falls in the pattern B segment. The conversation flow to be inquired from that prospect appears on that fellow's screen. So this now, in fact, it's a self-learning algorithm. So probably 12 words will come down to 10, 9, 8, etc., etc., etc. So this is one example of the deep tech and transforming that entire process. I've seen as an example. And my point, where disruption originates from as a general rule, so not a rule as such, but the practice that we've been following is try and identify the absolute extreme scenarios that your user is going to put your system into. Probably don't think of reducing the cost by 10%, 20%. Think how can it be made zero? And if you can kind of think of solutions to create it, bring it down to zero, that's where the origin of disruption really begins. So that's my take on those things, you know.
Kaustubh, I think really a good example, and I think it's a very day-to-day scenario when it comes to the outsourcing industry. Uh, just want to extend this question to to another point. Just wanted to clarify rather. Uh, do in the call center industry or with the outsourcing industry, typically you will find these calls being analyzed. So did they, were they able to even pick out some data points from a more autonomous perspective in terms of quality check as well? Or there were some integrated models which they have created later on?
I did quality checks as in I didn't get it.
So the output of these calls are recorded, right? So somebody has to take the outcome from that, what has been discussed. Now 4.5 million records is like a humongous
Right.
task.
Yes.
Now you cannot read out all, I mean, you cannot listen to all of those and then do that entire, understand that. So is there something kind of a different aspect which we can brought up into the, from the technology perspective, that we can read out those things and then bring the outcome as well into that? Was that been done, or it was only the outcome on a sampled basis they took the data out of it?
No. These 4.5 million calls, they also had the outcome of those calls recorded, whether this got converted, how many calls were required to the same customer to get converted, etc. So from that, they were able to match those patterns, and then this engine was created. So
Okay.
of course, it has to be outcome oriented. Absolutely.
Got it. So I got it. I mean, how the linkage is.
And then they have these trainers who, tell them what to speak, how to speak, which question to ask if this response comes, etc. So all of it is on an integrated effort.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Kaustubh.
And if I may just add on to that.
Yeah.
So it works both ways, right? So this technology, given the example, I'm pretty sure the same was also used to check which callers are more efficient, who are talking rudely to the prospective clients.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
So the conversion rate optimization is happening on both front, the quality of resources as well as the outcome of resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then that helps the appraisal HR fellows to appraise those people also. So a lot of engines, lot of layers can be built onto this basic engine.
Very right. I mean, wonderful example. I would say it's a common day-to-day example, but the way the innovations or disruptions can be used with respect to data and technology. Gaurav, I have one question for you, because you are working with a large organization. How is your experience specifically when you work from home culture and all the things are happening online? Have you seen some kind of a cybersecurity issues coming up? And if yes, then how are you handling those?
Yeah, I think cybersecurity issues are of multiple types. So one is obviously hacking. We have offices all around the world. At any point of time, each country has different threat levels, right? We are a food company, so for us, what we make and how we make is extremely important. So there is a big cybersecurity cell that protects our information. There's a new pattern that has started coming because of COVID, because there is a sense of fear. There is a lot of phishing that has started. Now, that's really not cybersecurity, but it's kind of cybersecurity where you will actually lose real money because people have a threat on back of their head in saying, hey, this must be something because it's related to COVID or something of that sort. So these kind of threats are natural, whether it's about banking information, whether it's your customer information. People will come and saying, hey, I'm calling from this customer and we change up our bank accounts to this, so make sure your invoices are paid in that account. Now all those things are happening every day, every second. So in a day we get like 3,000 to 4,000 hits where people are trying to break in. So these are not things that may happen one day, they happen all the time. And if you remember, I think year and a half back or 2 years back, there was a worm that came in, this malware that was launched, and we had an office where Maersk was in the same building. They actually had to tell people to go home and not come because they just could not run the operation for a month and a half. Mondelez had an issue where this malware went up to their manufacturing engines. They actually had to get their factory shut down because they just couldn't run some of that. So I think these are not threat that will happen. They happen every second of the day. For a large organization like us, it's all about we have only to lose, right? So a smaller organization doesn't have as much assets and as much things behind them. So there are less threat. For somebody like us, it is something that's non-negotiable. We have a separate department that looks at it 24/7, 365.
Okay, yeah, I understand, Gaurav. So, from the cybersecurity laws perspective, is it increased at this point in time, especially after the COVID scenario, or is it kind of they are also feeling the COVID pressures at their, in terms
No,
of the
no. So I think
hackers?
I think there are a couple of things. So one is your privacy, right? So privacy of your consumer. I think that's one set of law, and then the second set of law is cybersecurity. Each country is at a very different level of cybersecurity and consumer protection. So what we make sure is that we are actually compliant in those markets. So if South Korea has a very very stringent consumer protection law, we have to adhere to some of those things. So we do far more tighter integration with our cybersecurity team there. Cloud becomes a big new problem in terms of where your data is residing, where everything else is residing, who can break in. So I don't think things have changed after COVID, but things are already complex based on which countries you go in and what kind of information you hold.
You're right, Gaurav. I think it's going to be more and more critical right now. And one of the trend which I've seen recently is, I mean, of course, it's not a question; it's just an observation which I have. Is that a lot of newcomers, the youngsters, are getting into the cybersecurity hacking zone, and most of these people are trying it from a fun perspective. For them, it's like a fun hacking somebody's mobile and calling up from that. It starts from there, and then it leads up to any aspect onto it. So, I mean, that's what we have kind of observed. With this, I think I will want to take a question which has come for Arvind from Lavanya. uh, Arvind, I'll add up this question along with my question as well. So the question of Lavanya is that in the world of people, especially in India kind of countries, when there is a lot of population available, we are talking about dark rooms or people-less operations. How it is going to be kind of impact, or how it is going to be taken up from an emotional angle and a practical angle, because they will need some employment as well. uh, so that is one question from her. I would want to ask another question, add up over there so that you can consolidate that. uh, the second question is that in terms of when you have these kind of manufacturing automated modules or dark rooms, how do you see the intervention or the cybersecurity issues over there, and especially in the manufacturing industries?
Yes, very good question, and I really appreciate that question because any disruptive technology is going to have an impact, right? Any technology has already had impact, and disruptive is going to have more impact. So the problem is, as we see, as we go forward with technology, a lot of people are going to lose jobs. Let me tell the ugly truth first. There is going to be a lot of job loss across the world as we go into technology and artificial intelligence. So how do we address that? A lot of governments are already thinking about this, and a lot of big entrepreneurs are thinking about this. Elon Musk, as you know, the Tesla and SpaceX owner, he was the first to start the AI, business, like he made a startup. He was the biggest supporter of AI. Today, he has resigned from the position of chairman of that AI company, which he founded, and he is lobbying with US government to put restrictions on AI development, because he has now realized that this is going to disrupt the whole society. It's going to be a disaster. So that is what is going to happen if we really go that way full-fledged. So on the contrary, I think one of the European countries, I think it is Denmark or something, which has already implemented something called UBI. It's called Universal Basic Income. Okay, what it means is government will give certain amount to the people. See, it's like economy. It's multiple layers. You do automation, your cost comes down, and cost comes down, your cost of living comes down. So you need less money to survive. And disruptive technology in agriculture is also growing. Like you must have heard of hydroponics, which is like you can grow 100 times more, or 10 to 100 times more productive in a given square feet area. Israel is leading that technology. So that, and there is already a lot of automation in agriculture in European and American countries. So you bring that over to China and India, you will be able to produce more agri products per acre. So food becomes cheap. Technology is cheap. Today you get entertainment at nothing, right? You don't have to even go to your movie theater and spend 2,500 rupees for a family, which 350 rupees popcorn. You don't need that. For 350 rupees, you can see Netflix for 1 year. So this is disruptive. In this case, there is going to be a lot of unemployment going forward. And there is going to be something like UBI in all countries. So only certain areas, if you Google, you will find something like jobs that AI will not be able to replace. What is that? Taking care of children, kindergartens, hospital nurses, caretakers for elderly, music, arts, basically music, dance, these kind of, and technology. Like to create this technology, you need people. So the brightest and the smartest will have jobs, well-paying jobs. Rest of the community, the majority of the community will be on UBI. So this is coming. And if you Google, you will find a lot of TED Talks and the people talking about UBI. So this is, so there is always a plus and minus. I didn't want to scare off people by saying that, but this is the ugly truth about technologies that's coming.
Arvind, you have brought up a very important point because what happens is we generally tend to get very worried of technology. And whenever we talk about technology, we always call it as man versus machines.
Yes.
But the point here is it is never man versus machine. It is actually the scenario man with machines. And I'll share a very interesting case study which I have gone through with one of the a large company, IT company. Now they wanted to reduce, they have deployed AI, RPA, robotics process automations, to reduce their workforce requirement by 20%.
Yeah.
They've spent that money almost like, $4 to $5 million in 3 years time.
Mm-hmm.
And to assume that they will reduce their workforce by 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 3 years down the line, the money has been spent. Their workforce has actually got increased by 20%, and the efficiency of the technology system is only 2%.
Wow, that's an interesting information, but I'm sure something has gone wrong in the implementation for sure.
Yeah, so the problem here is the process understanding, and I think that is why we have put up a lot of focus on processes in last 3 days of our discussion. That unless, see, technology and people, which is I call it as people and systems, are only the process actors. So whatever process end to end you are creating, either it can be done by the people or it can be done by the technology. Now, whenever you put up a technology, you are only trying to replace human beings which are doing the mundane tasks, which are the repeated tasks, absolutely, which is not require a brain activity. It is like anybody and everybody can do it. Now,
Yes.
the whole point industry, what it is talking about losing jobs, while it says that 50% of the industry, jobs will go, but actually they will also create 50% of another different type of job roles, which can never be replaced.
Yeah, I am not denying that, but I don't think it will equivalent 50% job, right?
So it's
Let
a
us say
number
AI.
which I have just put it up.
Yeah.
I may not have the exact numbers, but yeah.
No, even for discussion purpose, you say, let us say an automation solution for a product manufacturing has removed 50% of the job of the operators, basically, right? And some supervisors. So what was their education? Maybe not even matriculation, right? They were
Right.
all like basic third standard or seventh standard, maybe some matriculation guys who did some oriental training, and they got into this job. Now, the technology, the job creation that you are talking about is in designing those automation, which will require probably a master degree, minimum a bachelor's of engineering degree in mechanical and automation, most probably a master's, to create those technologies. So you see the gap in skill,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what you do in technology is clonable, it's repeatable, right? You once you know how to do this, let us say 10 people, 100 people in a software company or a mechanical company, like my department, manufacturing engineering, they create a solution which will reduce 30% job, let's say. You can repeat that, right, in every country within your factory. And if you're a service provider, you can go and implement this technology in many other companies. So how many jobs are you really creating? It's just re-application of the solution.
Right.
But every company will lose so many operators, like blue colored jobs.
See, there is always I would say the comparison between the cost versus time, because when it comes to capital, when it comes to technology, there is a capital involved. So not everybody would have that capital to kind of put in as a capex. So people will still have people coming in into the place and being there on a OPEX perspective. But yes, there would be companies or the startups or the businesses who could have these kind of benefits coming in. I think with this, we will
I think
kind.
Costa wanted to say something. We should be listening to him.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
No, I
Costa,
think
you have some points?
no, just one point that, I mean, when 40 years back IT came in, everybody said jobs are going to be lost. But I mean, new jobs were created. Maybe immediately one generation feels the pinch, but people take over. So these kinds of things will happen. I mean, way long back when the printing press came in, people must have said calligraphers will lose their jobs. But
Yes,
other things happen.
True.
So
very true.
let's not.
I think very interesting points which has come up, and I would want to first of all thank all the speakers, Arvind, Kaustup, Rohit, Rakesh has left, right? Kailash, uh, and Anil, and for their time who has spent, you know, really shared their wonderful experience with all of us. I would also like to thank, my co-team, Rajshri, Charu, Sharmila, Mani, and Simran, who has been working behind the scenes to make this work, and even working day in, day out to make this happen. I would also like to thank our collaborator, Radio Masti 24 by 7 Singapore, who has been publishing daily Pulse of Wisdom in their show. And you can also watch it live on their Radio Masti app, which is available both on iOS and Android. That's the only Hindi radio channel available in Southeast Asia. So tune into that, and also you can watch these recordings at YouTube channel Bringle Talks. So please go and watch it there whenever you get a chance, and do inspire others also to do the same. With this, I would like to request Rajshri if she has captured Pulse of Wisdom for today's session, and she can throw some insightful thoughts for everybody.
So thank you, Anshav. Insight is given by everybody. I have just copied it. So I don't want any comparison with so many stalwarts talking such an amazing talk. I've just picked up few, pearls of wisdom. So you started with Rohit. Rohit talked a lot about deep technology, and your example of transportation coming, to monitor the driver behavior to the end result was amazing to know how it monitors the entire process with the deep data management. And I noticed when you were talking a lot about behavior. Even when Kaustubh was, giving example, your focus was on behavior and how it relates. And then Kaustubh said that how, his example throws back to the performance management system. So it's technology, linking to the, the management of the, the humans who are working behind it. Dr. Kaustubh gave scenario of what's happening now. Supply chain model is, broken in some areas and changed. A lot of scope for high resolution cameras. Health sector is growing. Kaustubh, you gave this BPO example going down to the actual, working on calls to know. So it's a humongous task, but with your client you have undertaken, and it's not with the intellectuals. You, in your coffee break, you went to those who are working on that, in that scenario. See, we all, so you went there and you looked at, this is where the change is happening, and that is where the strategy is happening. The change agents are sitting here. So you looked at the change agents and you integrated a entire thing, into the system. And I think you helped organization really to come up with amazing results. And the patterns that you talked about finally is like you're given a blueprint that whether we can, it's like in advance, that how many deals will be converted or not. Gaurav, you talked about the startups, how they should, instead of creating and recreating everything, should go about picking up things from the market, save their time and cost, and start running with it. And one of the example you talked about Microsoft 360, Microsoft 365 model. Also, you talked about your organization, how it was ready. So I think many companies were ready for today's scenario 2 years, 3 years back, and they just took advantage, and this shift happened from online to offline. So the smooth shift is happening when you're looking at the future. So in every talk, what's happening, every speaker is talking about the future view, and we have been collecting this anecdotes that when you are collating these future views and integrating into your business, you're future ready. I think their company was future ready. Otherwise 13,000 employees in a month without any disruption, going from offline to online, and which they managed, was a humongous task. Arvind, you gave us a amazing view on manufacturing industry. Everywhere when I look at the Economic Times and everywhere I see, everybody's talking about how that industry is going to boom, how the market is going to be, filled with lot of demands, which is coming from across the world. Uh, People as factory, your concept was dark room concept of manufacturing. Entire show will be, without any humans. IoT, you predict, you talked about IoT and how the problems can be predicted and solutions can be given. Your also last point, what you talked about, jobs going, and but new wave is coming, which was again complimented by Dr. Kaustubh, saying that no problem, we have been going through these situations in the past, and historically only one generation has affected. So though the jobs are going, but some new wave is coming, and I think people will quickly learn about it. Kailash Pandey is from Nepal. He gave an example of, how the scenario is in Nepal. His statement was victims of its own success. So he's talking about the disruptive technologies of victims of its own success. He went down to the how originally it was defined, and it has changed. And his focus was mainly on, when you're doing anything, you're focusing on bigger organizations and the profit making organization, whereas the smaller companies, smaller players are not getting anything. So maybe this is the area where people can really go about it, doing things. I think these are the points which I have picked up from today's talk. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anshu. Back to you.
I think Rachni, you have covered Pulse of Wisdom very, very beautifully. And, especially of this little, I would say, a deeper topic of technology and, disruptions, which is not very easy for everybody to understand. And still you have captured it pretty well. And I think I would also want to say, give a special applaud to all the speakers who have made it so easier that everybody can, kind of understand it at a very, very layman manner. Because what happens is this show is going to be, it's currently being visible, almost seen by almost 150 plus people every day, either on YouTube or on Zoom call with us. But eventually this is going to build up into an entire series which will be going to the all across. We will be broadcasting it into 140 plus countries, and with our current TV and media integration, which gives us a coverage of 200 plus million reach. So I think it is going to be going into a vast number of large set of number of people, and there will be every type of people available. So we will try to make it more more language friendly also, because of the different thing. But yes, English seems to be a pretty common language which can be understood by all. But yes, so thanks to all the speakers for spending your valuable time and sharing your insights. With this, I would want to say thank you so much, and keep bringing, keep growing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to all speakers for such a wonderful sharing today. It was awesome and enlightening. Thank you so much to everybody. Take care.
Thank you for all the speakers. It's a great session.
Stay safe. Take care, everybody.